106. A meeting of minds, or maybe not. Remember, we say nothing, admit nothing, Nux said. Ever. All we do is answer questions. Don't add anything and don't expand your answer. Keep in mind one simple thing. This is a Sylvan who has seen battle. He's seen it all. He's experienced in warfighting, and considering what he's doing now, he's also experienced in political infighting. Nodding from the dense group as they continued walking. Silence. Nux continued, "Don't forget, an effective part of questioning is the use of silence. Clever interrogators use it since they know that folk don't like silence and feel the need to fill it. Don't do that. Only answer his question, and if he's quiet, and he will be, then shut the freck up and let the silence hang there. We stay together no matter what he says. No one left behind. Am I clear?" Nods from all. Where has he learned all of this, was Allegria's thought as they continued on their way. On arrival, they were directed to the waiting area outside the Combat Marshal's office. Combat troopers and officers were continually going in and out of Vigo's office. They waited. Eventually, a staff officer came out, saw they had arrived, and, nodding to himself, went back in. A murmur of voices, and Vigo strode out a few minutes later. 229 immediately stood to attention. Vigo looked at them for what to some of them felt like eons, but said nothing. Eventually, he turned back to his office. 229 relaxed. A few minutes later, the same staff officer came out and said the Combat Marshal Vigo would see them now. 229 moved into a spacious office dominated by a large table covered with maps and differently coloured models of Sylvan figures. His own desk, comparatively small, was at the back of the room. Asking those with whom he was working to leave and to take their papers with them, Vigo and his staff officer were soon the only two left. The game, as Nux would say later, was on. Vigo looked at the Sylvan in front of him as they stood to attention, looking straight ahead, unmoving. He noted the bruises and other wounds he'd been told about, and saw they had almost healed. Who were the combat trainees that weren't caught? Bracken and Allegria raised their hands. "You two stay. The others can go. I will deal with you later." No one moved. "I said you are dismissed, and I will deal with you later." Vigo's voice becoming harder. Still, no one moved. Nux coughed. "If I may, Combat Marshal, we are intake 229. We have fought together and we have won together. We leave no one behind, ever. This is one of those times, Combat Marshal. We will not leave anyone behind to take responsibility for something that we all did." Nux continued, "We look after our own, no matter what the cost." Gaining confidence, he continued, "We were in a situation where we had been attacked, and those doing it thought they could get away with it. They thought they could get away with it," he repeated. "No Marshal attacks us with impunity. We protect each other. We escaped, and in doing so we made ourselves stronger. All said with great respect, Kombat Marshal. Nux stopped and looked ahead. 229 immovable, and Vigo knew it. He turned to his staff officer, standing beside him, and said, "Thank you. You can go. I'll deal with this." Once the officer had left, Vigo turned to 229 again. "Intake 229, this is your last chance to leave. You know the consequences should you not obey me in this matter. Is that clear?" No movement from 229. Vigo paused and then smiled. Looking at the group, he said, "Good, I hoped you'd react that way. Relax, Sylvan, we need to talk." Confusion obvious from 229. I said, "Relax, come and sit around the table here and I'll order some refreshments." Sitting down, the group remained guarded. This had not gone the way they had expected, especially Nux. Vigo was pleasant, relaxed, and talked generalities while the food was brought in. When they were alone again, he put down his cup and examined them one by one, assessing what he saw. Eventually, "By the way, I know what happened at the Cube. After 228's experience, I put in some very good people who can hide in plain sight to watch what happened. I take it you met Will and his cat." He looked at Nux, who nodded. "What a name, Cannibal!" Vigo laughed out loud. "A cat with an inferiority complex, for Sky's sake." He continued laughing, eyes alive with merriment. "Fairweather and I trained and worked together many years ago. He hated cats. It's the teeth." Seeing Nux shiver, he chuckled. "On our cube exercise, he found the kitten we now call Cannibal. We didn't know whether he'd been abandoned or the mother killed. We just didn't know. All I do know is that Fairweather looked at it, and it looked at him, and that was it. They were a crew, a hunter crew. We still had to rendezvous with the spy, so he hid the kitten with some food. We were then captured. You can imagine the rest. In those days, they just interrogated us with the slither dogs set low. The abomination you and others experienced began about 10 months ago, so it's still relatively new, but it was becoming worse. It took a lot of convincing to ensure 228 didn't take revenge. Their combat, so went along with it. It needed to be dealt with, and I was in the process of doing something about that when you came along and sorted it out for me. I don't think they'll be doing that shan again. By the way, Phoebe, I liked your idea of burning the cube. It had become unacceptable." Allegria coloured, nodded, and kept silent. "That eagle of yours has a good eye as well, Reedfly. Taking out those skylights with rocks, and at such speed, that was skill in both riding and flying. Commendable." Bracken almost smiled. "I also noticed from the report that many of you are also quite good at softness and slow, as well as using staves and cupidans. I did so like the way one of you ran up the back of of that novitiate whilst he was running away. Bang! 229 jumped, head hard on the floor, and his teeth were no more. Outstanding, simply outstanding. He looked at the ceiling, leaned back and began to laugh, his eyes creasing. The tension in the room eased. What really pleases me is that you remained true to each other. Had you done otherwise, we would not be talking like this. Well done all. Right, we now have to manage the expectations of the next of the Collegium. He explained what was to happen next. 229 was standing to attention in the square outside the Kombat faction headquarters dome. Vigo was in front of them, looking angry and fierce. One or two of the other casts were looking out of windows or standing in doorways, watching everything. Tell me what you did, 229, he roared. Be the first intake to escape the cube. Unwise response from Allegria. I don't mean that, worm-turd, and you know it. Tell me what you did to escape. We found a knife in the straw, Kombat Marshal, from Lux. We cut ourselves free and then ran away. Wide-eyed innocence personified. You're lying. I know you're lying, Vigo bellowed. The only problem is I can't prove it. You're all guilty. You are all guilty of something. I'm not sure what it is, but you're all guilty, and I will make you pay for this. I'm telling you now, once you return for the second term, all of you will be doing fatigues, cleaning latrines, and everything else that I can think of that will make your lives unpleasant. The order will be made today, let me assure you. Life is going to be unpleasant next term for all of you. Is that clear? Yes, Combat Marshal. Dismissed. Disappear from my sight, Sylvan. Disappear. They disappeared quickly. Shall I make the order for next term, Combat Marshal? The staff officer asked as Vigo came back into his office. Vigo looked at the officer and just stared at him. What? I said, shall I make the order for next term, Combat Marshal? The staff officer repeated. What do you think? They took out a group of worm turds that were doing harm to our people. They dealt with the problem whilst we were still planning to do something about it, and in a way that I approve. So really, Vigo shook his head in disbelief and went back to his office. Embarrassed at his stupidity, the staff officer hurried away. It was time to go home for the next 2 weeks. As they walked away, 229 were in a buoyant mood. They had won. It was also time to go home. For the next 2 weeks they would be able to relax with family and friends. A good thought. Chapter 13. Home Sweet Home. Allegria's welcome home was as she expected. Keith and Gloria were waiting for her at the portal. The love they felt for each other became obvious with hugs, kisses, and oh my, how you've grown in such a short time, comments from her mum and dad. Over the next few days, Allegria met with so many of her friends. Dean and Christine were still obviously in love and were talking about becoming partners. Allegria. Looking at them and the way they were sharing didn't seem to impact on her in the way it normally would have. She felt almost, she searched for the word, it came to her, disengaged. It was unsettling. Katie and Tina decided to have a party and all of their friends would be invited. As always, it was a good atmosphere. Parent, younglings, returning students, everyone happy. The sense of community strong. This was her home, and yet, Allegria continued to feel unsettled and didn't know why. She looked around to see if anyone had noticed how she was reacting. No one. And then she saw Keith looking at her, pride but also understanding. He raised his glass to her and smiled, lifting up his head to indicate Allegria follow him. They went outside. Away from the noise and bustle, he turned to his daughter. "What is it, my sweet youngling? You look troubled." "I am, and I don't know why. I thought going away and learning about Kombat would help me find out about myself, about who I actually am. And yes, I know I'm your daughter, but there's something within me that I just don't know how to describe. I'm confused, Dad. I'm just confused." Keith looked at his daughter, concern in his eyes. "It'll be a mix of things, Allegria. You've grown and matured into a beautiful Sylvan. The 4 months you've been away have made you physically stronger. You only have to look at you to see that. You're also experienced in a number of other things, I would imagine. Softness, learning slow, colours." He paused and looked at her quizzically. "Yes, but how would you know? You're teacher cast and that's not part of your training. Mum told me what you did at your collegium. It had nothing to do with subjects that were being taught." I wasn't always a teacher, Allegria, and your mum wasn't always a healer. We have a past that we've kept to ourselves, and there's a reason we have you." He looked at this beautiful, lithe and muscular Sylvan and could see how good she would be in her combat role. He knew it. His own personal experience helped. Making his decision, he delivered his bombshell. "We knew your biological mother, Allegria. Your mum and I were in the same warband, the Hidden. I was the second, and Gloria a trooper, our medic. Your mother was our Tuan. We last saw her when she left for a meeting. We don't know who she was meeting with or where. She'd given birth to you some days before and left you with the rest of us. We waited for her to return. By the time we had to leave, we knew she wasn't coming back. She was gone. We never knew what happened to her, but we had you." His voice soft. Being in the memories of that time, pain, regret, shaking his head and pulling himself together. Keith continued. "Eventually we had a weapon draw and agreed that you had to be protected from whatever it was that had caused your mother to disappear. That fell to Gloria and me since we were partnered and were ready to have our own family. We agreed we would look after you. The rest of the warband went back to the complexity to report However, it seemed to be accepted and the world moved on. So, as you can see, we weren't asked to look after you by the warband trooper. We were given responsibility for you by our own warband, one of the best decisions made that day. He continued speaking softly, knowing the impact of what he was saying. We managed to find this community, Sulu, where we were welcomed, since I told them I was a teacher and that Gloria was a healer, which is what they needed here then. We were accepted, as were you, our daughter. Silence from Allegria, thoughts racing, confusion, anger, all flitted across her face as Keat spoke. "But why haven't you told me this before?" she almost wailed. Resigned tone of voice from Keat. He sighed. "We couldn't. There was some very powerful Sylvan involved in what your mother was trying to prevent. Very powerful. They're also vindictive scum tarts." His voice hard, to the extent that Allegria began to see the combat trooper within, hidden so well and completely for all these years. "We knew that they'd be searching for you since they were threatened by who you are. We don't know why, but they are, and as you have learned, we look after our own. You are our own, Allegria." He fell silent. The silence between them continued for what seemed like an eternity. They were still looking at each other when Gloria walked past. She paused, wondering what had happened. The glance her partner gave her said it all. "I'm assuming you've told her, not a question." Keat nodded, silent, still looking at Allegria, slightly pale and shaking and trying to control the torrent of emotions that raged through her. Gloria turned to Allegria. "Did your dad tell you that we had to hold him back from going after your mother?" Allegria shook her head. Being the second, he felt responsible for her loss. He wasn't, of course, since your mother could be very, very stubborn. Obviously a trait that you don't have. This last caused the beginnings of a smile, tension starting to decrease. Gloria continued. "Your mother, believing the person she was meeting was a conduit to a group of normal shadow who were about to mount an attack in Tokyo. She thought that if she let them know we were around, this might make them think twice. It didn't, and a couple of days after she disappeared, the scum tards released some sarin into a number of public locations, train stations, temples. Fortunately, the work we'd done previously meant that instead of it being in an enclosed area, we'd force them to release it in the open. Didn't work too well, thank the sky, but it was close." She looked at Keat. "By that time, our Varben were exhausted and couldn't mediate any more material. We were becoming weaker and weaker. No weapons to talk of, running out of food and options and outmaneuvered. Wrecked, in other words. We had to leave, but not too quickly. If we rushed, we would be seen." Allegria could not believe what she was hearing, nor what she was seeing. These two gentle souls, caring, compassionate, loving, transforming before our eyes into battle-hardened warriors, the body language changing, a more alert look to their posture. Their actual language was changing and, smiling to herself, becoming more combat trooper. It was as though they were sloughing off their years-old disguise, layer by layer. I like this, she thought, slowly relaxing. Gloria speaking again. We also had to ensure your and our safety. The Shadow and their normals aren't stupid, and we knew that they'd be searching for us. We had to move safe houses frequently. We couldn't use some of the portals as there were too many of them and not enough of us. We didn't want to risk going in blind and leaping into the cold, since we didn't know the area sufficiently. We might have ended up in a swamp, and that's not good. Nodding from Keith. He took over, especially with you, Allegria. You were very new, somewhat smelly, and also very noisy. Smiling. But we knew it was you they were after. That's when we made our plan. We decided the best thing to do was cause confusion. Risky, but worth it. We changed the Varbum to bladed weapons. After that, they were locked, since there wasn't enough power to change them back into anything else. There were 7 of us and a cat. Gloria and I were to look after you and return to the Quorum, and then hide in plain sight away from all our previous haunts. The others were to create confusion to allow us to escape, and that's what we did.